Intruder alert! Red spy is in the base.
A red spy is in the base?
Protect the briefcase!
We need to protect the briefcase!
Yo, a little help here?
I got it. Stand back, son. One.
Hey, it's still here.
Gentlemen?
Spy. Spy is a tricky and deceptive rushdown fighter who excels at breaking through his opponent's defenses and setting up dangerous scenarios that can potentially lead to unblockable damage. With his access to great mobility stats and a variety of dangerous tools befitting his role as a dashing, backstabbing rogue, Spy has all he needs to maintain pressure and never let himself be pushed into a corner, with many of his attacks having the ability to cripple his foes and stop huge damage. But such strengths are not without their inherent downsides. While he is incredibly dangerous, Spy is known for being one of Team Fortress 2's most fragile characters, and this is reflected here in Smash by being one of the game's lighter fighters. And while his tools are proven to be deadly if he gets in close, his overall average range makes the need to close the gap all the more important. As a Spy player, it's your job to carefully analyze your opponent before closing the gap, all before exploiting their major weaknesses in order to open them up and deal huge damage. Just be careful, as just because there's no pyro around doesn't mean that your attempts at espionage can't end in tears. Spy stands as a tall humanoid character, his height being on par with characters like Kazuya and Terry. A man who can essentially be described as a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, this globe-trotting Frenchman is often regarded as one of the most terrifying members of the Team Fortress team, and he probably would be, if pyro didn't exist. With a variety of tricky gadgets, a reliable revolver, and a collection of knives whose sharpness is only matched by his suits, Spy is quite unlike the other two members of the mercenary team that I've already covered. For while Heavy and Soldier are designed to be characters that fight their quarry head-on, Spy on the other hand is designed to slip behind enemy lines and take out critical targets before making his daring escape. As a result, Spy is a far more elaborate and difficult character to use at a base level, as while he doesn't have anything like rocket jumping for his players to learn, the need to master situational awareness and placement is more than a mountain for any player to climb, especially when he lacks the bulk of the other mercs. In terms of design, a lot of Spy's basic animations, including his idle pose, run, and jump, but while that's the case, a lot of his miscellaneous animations will be kept intact from TF2. These include taunts and a bunch of in-between animations, such as looking through his disguise kit, inspecting his revolver, and flipping around his knife. While this might technically make him less faithful to his original design when compared to Heavy and Soldier, I feel that in order to make Spy work effectively, there would need to be both changes and compromises made to his basic design. And while some things will sadly have to be left behind, I still believe that this moveset's not only true to Spy's character, but also true to his sneaky playstyle in TF2. In terms of mobility options, Spy has 2 jumps, along with the ability to crawl and wall jump. While his sharp suit and sharper knives do very well to set him apart from the rest of the TF2 mercenaries, it's not what most would consider Spy's most defining trait as a playable class. No, instead, his access to a unique mechanic unlike anything in TF2 has given him a rather devious reputation. A tool that can be used to infiltrate enemy lines, scout out objectives, and build up paranoia in anyone that's not already playing Pyro. And it just so happens to also serve as his character mechanic here in Smash as well. Invisibility. In TF2, invisibility grants Spy the ability to completely avoid detection while moving freely past his enemies, allowing him to reposition and get the drop on foes that never saw him coming. While there are a plethora of ways to halt a Spy's advance, the fact that you can be anywhere at any time will always leave your enemies afraid of potential pokes to their backs. In Smash, however, Spy will utilize invisibility to quickly advance and retreat from encounters. And while invisible, Spy will bypass incoming damage as if he's not even there. This can allow the Spy player to open opponents up from unexpected angles, as well as make use of his incredible whiff punishing abilities. But much like in TF2, invisibility has its limits. Instead of activating invisibility and moving around freely, Spy will instead use invisibility as a burst movement option, almost like it's a command dash that can lead into a variety of Spy's attacks. And much like in TF2, it's a major part of Spy's offensive and defensive game plan, as Spy himself was a rather frail fighter in both Smash and his home franchise. As a result, invisibility will be your main way of avoiding damage, with much of Spy's game plan revolving around catching opponents out of position and punishing mistakes with enormous damage courtesy of his trusty barfly knife. But I sincerely hope you're not expecting to fully understand invisibility's ins and outs the moment you pick up the character. While the thrilling high-risk, high-reward aspects of Spy's design are fun, baby Spies will need to be very careful when trying to move around the screen, as opponents that can predict where Spy is going to appear are capable of punishing him before he can even react. Thankfully, there are many ways to keep your opponent guessing, but much like Spy in TF2, it's going to take time to even get used to, let alone master. Overall, Spy is a rather unconventional rushdown fighter when he's compared to his contemporaries, and thanks to his unique ways of ganging in and punishing poor placement, he's also arguably one that will take the longest to learn. Learning how to time when and where you'll appear is one of the main aspects of Spy you'll need to learn to succeed, but once you come to understand just how much Spy is capable of, there's no pyro in the world that's going to stop your approach. Now that we've talked about the intricacies of Spy and his character mechanic, let's now move on to something a bit easier to understand as we talk about Spy's normals. Spy's normals will consist of a blend of hand-to-hand combat and deep cuts courtesy of his trademark barfly knife, with many of his attacks not only coming off fast, but also sneaking in extra hits to accentuate his master infiltrator motif. While Spy is described as a character who should avoid direct fights as much as possible, various cinematics have done more than enough to show that he's quite adept at hand-to-hand combat. Spy's neutral combo is Dashing Strikes, a set of 3 attacks that will start with a horizontal chop, all before transitioning into a knee strike and ending with a horizontal knife slash to knock foes back. This simple combo's greatest strength is the incredible speed of the first jab, with its 2-frame startup being able to check almost any button at close range and providing Spy with a great anti-pressure option. But its relatively short range means that you'll need to get close to your opponent to use it, and that's close enough for opponents with swords to space entirely using their disjoints. Regardless, it has its uses in Spy's game plan, but its unremarkable launch power and average damage give it more defensive purposes than offensive ones. Spy's forward tilt is Killer Cuts, a 2-hit target combo that will have Spy slash out in front of himself with a pair of wide-hitting knife slashes to launch foes away. Thanks to its multi-input properties, the player can cancel the first slash into a variety of other options, including but not limited to dash, shield, grab, and other attacks. So if your opponent blocks the first hit and you're fearing a punish, there's no harm in stopping the combo early and getting out of there. A Spy that knows when to back off is a Spy that lives to see another day after all. Spy's up tilt is Dandy Step, a quick and reliable anti-air option that will have Spy perform a high-hitting roundhouse kick, knocking grounded foes off the ground and airborne foes even higher, all while lowering his hurt box to make himself harder to hit. At lower percents, the player can potentially combo this move into itself against the game's heavier characters, and in turn, start combos thanks to its quick recovery speed and decently fast startup speed. However, it should be noted that this move doesn't sport a disjoint, so while Spy becomes harder to hit overall, it can still end up trading with opponents if you're not careful, if not outright losing the disjoint itself. Also, shorter characters might be able to crouch underneath this move's hitbox, so be careful of that. Spy's down tilt is Deceptive Sweep, a quick poke option that will have Spy reach out and sweep one of his legs in a front-to-back motion, knocking out the opponent's balance before launching them in one of 2 directions. Opponents hit by the leg will be launched upwards, putting them in the prime position to be comboed into aerials or even up tilt if the percent is low enough on certain fighters, while opponents hit by only Spy's foot will be launched more horizontally, allowing the player to use this as a spacing option in the neutral. While its quick speed can be difficult to challenge if the opponent doesn't see it coming, its lack of a disjoint can lead to punishment if the player uses it in an opportune time. Spy's dash attack is Assassin's Kiss, a quick yet brutal attack that allows Spy rush forward, his knife clutched tightly in his hand as he carves through any opponent in his path. This strike will launch foes with solid force if it lands, and even if blocked, Spy will be able to bypass shields as he attacks, allowing the player to use this move in order to escape the corner, all while putting some notable strain on his opponent's shield in the process. As a result, this can be a dangerous move to block if the Spy player already has you locked in hit stun, so if you want to avoid getting stabbed in the back, rolling or jumping is the best way to avoid this move. For his get-up attacks, Spy will attack around himself with a mixture of shoulder checks and kick attacks, all while slashing out in front of himself for his ledge attack. For his smash attacks, Spy will make use of the deadly properties of his trademark knife, as instead of going in for simple slashes, he'll show just how sharp his blades are by driving them deep into his opponent.
Some are born great, others have greatness thrust into their sternums.
While his iconic stabs are usually safe for hitting someone in the back, they'll instead be changed around here in Smash to better suit a fighting game setting. That, and also as a means of balancing out what was a guaranteed instant kill regardless of health in TF2. Here in Smash, all of Spy's smash attacks will deal both more damage and sport unique effects if he strikes his opponent in the back. And in the special case of fighting game characters that always turn around to face you, hitting them with a smash attack within a 55 frame window of them turning around will activate the special effects. Consider this your way of introducing Smash to the wonderful world of Spy's face stabbing from TF2.
Time to make that ugly face a little prettier.
Spy's forward smash is Deceiver's Blow, an aggressive attack that allows Spy thrust his body forward, his knife being held backwards as he drives it into the closest opponent with all the strength he can muster. On its own, this move's speed and damage are above average, allowing the Spy to use this as a kill confirm at higher percents. But should you manage to strike an opponent in the back, the move's knockback and damage will be increased by 1.5 times its normal value, greatly improving its ability to kill and making it one of the strongest smash attacks in the game. However, while strong, this is also Spy's slowest smash attack on the recovery, meaning that a whiffed blow can lead to some serious retaliation from your opponent. And don't even get me started if it gets countered. To signify whether the backstab was successful or not, Spy's smash attacks will sport a heavy zoom-in effect if the stab is successful, while simply launching like any other smash attack if it's not. Spy's up smash is Rogue Combination, a multi-part attack that will start by having Spy perform a reverse grip stab in front of himself, all before jumping up and performing an overhead slash to launch foes upwards. Normally, this move will launch foes away horizontally if they're hit by the initial stab, or upwards if the opponent is hit by the rising attack, with its speed and range being fairly above average. But if an opponent is hit in the back by the initial stab, they'll be dragged upwards by the overhead slash and take much more damage than the normal version of the move, as well as far more knockback. If an opponent is hit in the back by owning the rising slash, they'll simply take more damage and be dragged along with the attack, making it impossible for them to fall out of it. Finally, Spy's down smash is Spinal Strike, a very powerful yet far more traditional showing of Spy's knife skills as he performs a powerful downward stab, with this move only hitting on one side of Spy to make up for its power. This is, of course, designed to reference the standard backstab animation of the knife in TF2, and since it holds such an honor, it has the most drastic change depending on whether or not it stabs an opponent in the back. Normally, this move will spike opponents on hit, much like Kazuya's down smash, but if the opponent is stabbed in the back by this move, they'll not only take far more damage, but also enter a crumple state, leaving them wide open to even more damage and referencing the way that enemies would crumple to the ground after the insta-kill effects of a backstab in TF2. While these effects can be devastating, it should be known that you cannot link backstab effects together, meaning that you can't immediately follow up a down smash backstab with a forward smash backstab and expect to immediately delete anyone who doesn't weigh as much as King K. Rool. Even if that's the case, this is Spy's strongest kill setup by a notable margin, so it has many a use in his game plan. To help him fit in better as a rushdown fighter here in Smash, Spy's overall aerial mobility has been increased to be more in line with other rushdown fighters, including but not limited to a notable increase in acceleration and fall speed. While the general airspeed of the Merch is roughly the same in TF2, as for his aerial attacks, Spy will follow the same design philosophy as his grounded normals, with his attacks being a blend of hand-to-hand combat and effective strikes from his trademark butterfly knife. Spy's neutral air is French Staple, a simple yet reliable attack that will have Spy attack in front of himself using a long-lasting kick. This simple move will provide Spy with both a reliable landing option and a great anti-air conversion tool, and thanks to its quick speed, it can also be used to check the aerials of opponents trying to jump in at you. However, since it has relatively weak knockback, you won't be securing kills with this move unless you're using it offstage at very late percents. Spy's forward air is Croissant Rouge, a versatile disjointed strike that will have Spy perform a vertical slash with his knife, starting low and ending high and launching foes on hit. Thanks to this move's great speed and decent disjoint, this is one of Spy's strongest combo options and one of his main ways for following up his grounded tilts, all while providing him with a great way to challenge opponents trying to camp platforms or approach him from above. At lower percents, you can even cancel the landing leg of this move by fast falling midway through the slash, which can pop opponents off the ground and allow you to jump up and slash them again, much like Cloud's up air, but its relatively average knockback will keep it from being a kill option unless you're trying to use it off stage. Spy's up air is Dashing Rocket, a multi-purpose aerial that will have Spy perform a rapid-hitting spin kick, all before performing one final kick to launch foes upwards. This can be quite the reliable kill confirm should they not fall out of it, but outside of this specific niche, this move's greatest strength is its ability to drag opponents back down towards the stage, allowing the player to continue combos or even set up one of Spy's many 50-50 mix-ups. Also, thanks to its speed, it also happens to be one of Spy's best ways of challenging opponents on platforms. So whatever the situation, the move has its uses. Just be sure you take note that this move doesn't sport a disjoint when trying to use this against opponents with swords. Spy's back air is Concealed Check, a move that plays into Spy's reputation as a back poke and snake as he thrusts his knife out behind himself, the grip reversed in order to try and drive it into his opponent's spine. While this move lacks the range of his other aerial attacks, it makes up for it by having the potential to be Spy's strongest aerial if used correctly, and much like his smash attacks, it all depends on whether you strike your opponent in the back. Regular blows will deal solid damage, with it being enough to secure kills a higher percent should the player be desperate to close out of stock. But if the attack strikes an opponent in the back, its damage and launch power will be greatly increased, transforming it into one of the strongest aerial kill confirms amongst the cast. As a result, using this move when crossing up opponents or running off of platforms is one of the best ways to line up the sweet spot, but try to not be too predictable with it, as its poor range will make it very easy to punish if you whiff it. Finally, Spy's down air is Rebellious Guillotine, a straightforward move that will have Spy perform an axe kick with one of his legs, spiking opponents on hit and dealing some solid damage in the process. In comparison to the other spikes in Smash, this move sports notably faster startup in exchange for a spike that's only average in launch power, allowing the player to pressure opponents effectively off stage and makes it so it takes longer for the spike to confirm kills. This move also sports a sour spot as well, which will launch opponents up and away from Spy on hit and essentially act as a punishment for failing the spike, as this launch angle will give your opponent another chance to recover and potentially make it back to the stage. This is designed to go in tandem with Spy's design as a precision-oriented class in TF2, as failing to land a crucial attack against your enemies is very detrimental to your well-being. Spy will reach forward and grab his opponent with both arms, all before forcing them into a headlock much like Snake does. For his pummel, Spy will elbow his opponent's neck, and compared to Snake's rapid neck-cracking pummel, it's much slower but does notably more damage. As for his throws, Spy will make use of his CQC skills in order to put his opponents out of commission, with these throws being designed more for utility than for damage. While not the biggest part of his game plan, these throws can come in handy if you're looking to mix up your playstyle, and thanks to their ability to set up 50-50s at specific percentage intervals, they can be quite dangerous if your opponent doesn't know the matchup. Spy's forward throw is Floor Lance, a simple throw option that will have Spy knee his opponent in the back in order to knock them off balance, all before driving his foot into their back and kicking them out and away from him. This throw's unique aspect is its very low launch angle, making it so opponents will slide along the floor and be forced into a hard knockdown state once they come to a stop. As a result, the player can use this throw to set up a variety of Okizeme options, but since the gap between Spy and his opponent grows as the percent rises, the window will become tighter and the opportunities will become few and far between. Spy's up throw is Eiffel Rocket, a more practical throw that will have Spy grab his opponent tightly by the neck before forcing them to the ground with a leaping slam. The slam will cause the opponent to bounce off the floor and up into the air, and at low to mid percents, the player can follow up this throw with aerials or potentially even start a ladder combo if they position themselves properly. Despite this, however, most characters will be knocked out of combo range once they hit Spy's optimal kill range, so it's best to use this for the early lead and stick to his other options later into a stock. Spy's back throw is Tour de Force, another practical throw option that will have Spy knee his opponent before flipping them over his shoulder, tossing them into the floor and away from him. In comparison to his forward throw, this throw is mainly designed to be used as a repositioning tool, allowing Spy to force his opponent into a disadvantaged state and show that trying to keep him in the corner is a bad idea. As a result, this throw is at its best when you have your back to the ledge, as Spy's great aerial kick can easily gimp a decent chunk of the roster if he throws them off stage at around mid-percent. Finally, Spy's down throw is Subterfuge Submission, another utility option that will have Spy drive his foot into his opponent's leg, forcing them to crumble before he elbows them into the floor and forces them into a hard knockdown state, much like Snake's down throw. Like his forward throw, this is one of Spy's main ways of forcing his opponents to deal with his dangerously strong Okizeme options, as choosing wrong after a down throw exchange could lead to this becoming one of Spy's best kill setups. However, its strengths can be quickly turned against Spy if its opponent reads his mix-up, and given Spy's pitiful defenses, you're not going to want to end up on the receiving end of this more than once, especially if you don't want to lose your stock. We've now reached Spy's specials, and much like the Team Fortress designs that came before him, this is where he'll be making use of his versatile arsenal of weapons to provide an extra layer of devious trickery to his playstyle. All of Spy's specials have notable offensive and defensive uses, and while his normals already have a great level of versatility to them, using them in tandem with these specials is a mandatory aspect of Spy's design you're going to need to learn if you want to use this character to their utmost potential. Don't worry though, as while this might sound like a tall order, some of these moves are fairly simple to understand and are, in turn, also fairly easy to use. Starting with his neutral special, Spy will make use of his trademark ranged weapon from Team Fortress 2. A weapon that can be used for a variety of purposes, including but not limited to picking off opponents trying to run, to speeding up the destruction of buildables, to simply just a surprise option that not every player is prepared for. The revolver. Yes, while some might not know it, Spy does indeed have a gun, and learning when and how to use it is just as important as positioning yourself for a backstab. Here in Smash, Spy will pull out the revolver from his suit coat and fire it off in front of him, its projectile traveling quickly and dealing a decent chunk of damage should it land. While these shots do not deal much knockback, their damage and hit stun can be enough to interrupt opponents trying to charge projectiles or push back opponents off stage enough to confirm kills. But should one shot not be enough, the player can continue to press the B button to fire up to 6 times in quick succession. This mimics the 6-round chamber of Spy's revolver in TF2, and once the chamber is empty, Spy will need to load in another set of bullets before he can fire again. Thankfully, much like firing the gun, you can do this while moving around, so you aren't entirely a sitting duck during this reload animation. But since you can't attack while the animation is going on, it's still best that you be careful. While firing 6 shots in a row can sound quite strong, especially if the shots don't have damage fall off, one thing they do have is not only damage decay, but increased spread the more the gun is fired without stopping. As a result, what was originally a guaranteed straightforward shot with 1 shot at a time will quickly lead to bullets flying astray and more than likely missing their target unless you're standing very close to your opponent. If you want to make the most of the revolver's strengths, it's best to wait a short time between each shot, as doing so will guarantee that your spread doesn't increase and the damage doesn't decay with each shot nearly as bad as rapidly firing. It should also be noted that moving around while you shoot will increase the bullet spread much faster than if you're standing still, so if you can help it, it's best to stop and shoot before moving again. Moving on to his side special, Spy will utilize his iconic Invisawatch to move across the battlefield and catch opponents in a web of inescapable damage from so much as a single moment of hesitation. This is Invisirush. With this, Spy will strike a quick pose as he presses a button on his watch, all before disappearing and rushing in a direction chosen by the player. During this dash, Spy is completely invulnerable to all damage, be it physical or projectile, and once he moves in the player's chosen direction, he'll appear from a puff of smoke that will form on screen a moment before he becomes visible. This smoke is not only a visual indication for the Spy player to help them navigate the stage while invisible, but also a warning to his opponents that they will need to be ready for a counterattack should they want any chance of stopping Spy's mix-up potential. Spy is capable of acting out of this move with almost any option the player desires, which includes grounded normals, aerials, holding up shield, grabbing, and jumping if the player uses this move before they use their second jump. The only thing that Spy cannot perform out of Invisirush is other special moves, although this can be bypassed if the player saved their second jump, which will allow another special to be used once performed. As a result, the player can mix up opponents with options like Invisirush, aerial, jump, Invisirush again and another aerial should they be quick enough, or even Invisirush towards the ground and follow up with a grab if the opponent blocks the first move. There's so much that is possible from this one move alone, but it should be noted that Spy sports no intangibility or way to bypass damage once he reappears, meaning that it is very possible to punish an aggressive Spy with moves like invincible reversals or out of shield options if they don't know how to break out from a fight. Do keep in mind, however, that skilled Spies will be able to bait and punish these kinds of moves, so don't expect this to save you from every encounter you might have. Moving on to his recovery special, Spy will make use of a mobility tool that was introduced into TF2 through a game mode known as Manpower. While other characters in the TF2 cast could use this as a recovery option as well, I feel it works the best with Spy's design. The grappling hook. With this, Spy will quickly whip out the grappling hook from inside his suit and launch it upwards, its hook attaching onto the first solid surface it hits and pulling Spy to it at incredible speed. Thanks to its unique design, Spy will not only be able to hook onto a ledge, but even the sides of a stage. And if used in tandem with his ability to wall jump and wall cling, the player can use this grappling hook multiple times in a single recovery in order to greatly increase Spy's recovery potential. This hook can also hit opponents as well, but unlike Joker's grappling hook that pulls opponents down, Spy will instead be pulled to the opponent he hooked, much like you can hook on the other mercs with the grappling hook in Manpower mode. As a result, Spy can potentially use this to start combos or punish opponents trying to recover, and if an opponent stands too close to the ledge when Spy is trying to recover, he can use his opponents as a stepping stone to make it very difficult to stop his return to the stage. Despite this, however, skilled players will be able to greatly punish Spy's recovery attempts through both spikes and run-off back airs, as Spy is technically at his most vulnerable when trying to recover. Finally, for his down special, Spy will make use of what might be his most infamous tool to greatly punish over-aggression and show that no matter how hard you try or how far you run, you're never truly safe from Spy. Dead wrong. With this, Spy will pull out his Dead Ringer and strike a defensive stance, and should he take damage from any source while in this stance, Spy will fall to the ground in a hard knockdown state. Wait, what? You simply get hit? Not quite. You see, the Dead Ringer has garnered a reputation in TF2 for being what was once one of the most powerful tools in the entire game, as damaging Spy in this way would not only lead to your opponent thinking they've killed you, but grant you the ability to sneak behind your opponent and strike them when they least expect it. I mean, they killed you, right? Why worry about something that you've already killed? Many people thought the same thing, only to get stabbed in the back by the very person they thought they got rid of. Here in Smash, Spy will reduce the incoming damage of the move he counters by 90%, all while cutting all knockback in the process. At this point, the game's speed will slow down for a brief moment, much like it does when you impact Shulk's foresight. And depending on how close you are to your opponent at this point, Spy has a couple of ways to follow up this false hope. If your opponent is far away or you're hit by a projectile, Spy can perform an invisirush in the direction chosen by the player, allowing them to approach or step away from an encounter, all while traveling further than a normal invisirush as they do so. On top of that, there's no smoke cloud to show where Spy is going to reappear from, essentially granting the player a safer approach in exchange for taking a small chunk of damage in return. If your opponent is close by, however, then you'll be able to perform Dead Wrong's main follow-up attack by holding the B button during the counter animation. It's just when your opponent thinks they put down Spy for good, he will reappear behind them and force them into an inescapable command grab. Having grabbed the opponent from behind, Spy will drive his knife into their back as he berates them for thinking they could get rid of him so easily.
Did you forget about me?
To end the command grab, Spy will perform one of two different attacks depending on whether or not he countered an opponent on the ground or in the air, with the grounded hit knocking opponents into a hard knockdown state with a kick or spiking the opponent straight down with an elbow strike if they're airborne. This unique command grab counter can quickly change the pace of a match, allowing Spy to turn what could be certain doom into a kill from as much as 3 hits. However, to make up for its power, and to play into the design of the Dead Ringer itself, this counter will go on cooldown once it's been used for any purpose, with it taking a total of 6 seconds to come off of cooldown and be usable once again. If the player tries to perform the counter with the Dead Ringer on cooldown, Spy will play a unique animation that will have him take notice of his empty watch, all before giving a small quip of fear or regret as he puts it back in his jacket.
Oh no.
Once the Dead Ringer has been recharged, it will play a sound clip similar to the noise a Spy makes when decloaking with the Dead Ringer equipped. And trust me when I say that the noise is something that you will not miss, especially given how loud it is. Next is the final smash, and for this, Spy will utilize every tool at his disposal to cut his opponents down and make it impossible to escape his grasp, as once Spy picks his target, he always gets his kill. All the Team Fortress 2 characters I've done so far have had final smashes that not only embody their personalities, but also their roles in the match of Team Fortress 2. Heavy, being a class that performs the best when alongside his teammates, calls in his entire team to back him up for his final smash. Soldier, being a lone wolf class whose best ally is other soldiers, calls upon said fellow soldiers to help him with his final smash. Spy, on the other hand, is an infiltrator that works entirely on his own, striking when his opponents least expect it and making such an impact in such little time. And this is embodied perfectly through his final smash. This is Rose Ensanglant. When the final smash starts, Spy will ready his knife before rushing forward at incredible speed, slashing through all opponents in his path and locking the first opponent he hits into a cinematic final smash. At this point, Spy will continue to rush through his opponents, moving like a shadow and only appearing briefly as he cuts his opponent with his knife, with these repeated blows forcing his opponent to their knees. At this point, Spy will appear behind his opponents, giving them his regards before he deals his final blow.
Time for the killing stroke.
Swinging his knife around in his hand before driving it into his opponent's back. As the critical hit sound effect rings out, the screen will change to a blood-red background while Spy and his opponent are shown as silhouettes. And should the backstabbed opponent be over 100% damage once the final smash is done, they will crumple to the floor and be instantly KO'd. Those that are lucky enough to not be above 100% damage will simply fall to the ground and be left in a hard knockdown state, all before the game transitions back to the regular battlefield. At this point, Spy will be shown wiping the blade between his fingers as he berates his opponent one final time, all before returning to his idle animation.
Another day, another back with a gaping stab wound.
For his victory theme, Spy will make use of the same victory theme that has been used by previous TF2 characters and will be used by any TF2 characters that might come after him, which is the ending riff of the Team Fortress 2 theme. While other themes could easily serve as a victory theme for Spy, none of them are nearly as iconic as this wonderful tune. Victory animation number 1 will have Spy berate his opponent, all while he spins his knife around in his hand.
The outcome was never really in doubt.
Once he's done cutting into his opponent with his tongue, he'll strike a confident fighting pose with his blade at the ready, showing that he's not afraid to cut into them even more. Victory animation number 2 will show Spy emptying shells from his revolver, all before loading in new bullets and pointing the revolver at the camera. As he does so, he'll pass along a couple of words to his former opponent.
Like a wolf among the lambs.
Finally, victory animation number 3 will show Spy walking past the camera with a briefcase in his hand, all before turning his head back to the camera and giving a couple of parting words.
All in a day's work.
With nothing more that needs to be said, Spy will disappear thanks to his Invisawatch, with this animation referencing the end of Meet the Spy. Much like the other TF2 characters that came before him, Spy will forego the use of custom taunts from his home game and instead make use of the basic weapon taunts that many a player become accustomed to throughout TF2's lifespan. While I'd love to give him some of his other taunts, which includes the potential to give him an even better box taunt than that of Snake, sometimes simplicity is best. Taunt number 1 will have Spy take a moment to sweep the dust off his suit, all before he tightens his tie and returns to his idle animation. This is the basic taunt Spy can perform with his primary weapon out, and much like in TF2, he'll have a couple of things to say as he composes himself.
It's a privilege to be killed by a man who looks this good.
Taunt number 2 will have Spy take a battle-ready stance with his knife, performing a pair of mocking slashes before stabbing forward, mimicking the stance and mannerisms of a fencer before returning to his idle animation. This is the default taunt of Spy's melee weapons, and much like in TF2, you can use it to deal damage to opponents who are too close. While it won't instantly kill like it does in its home game, you can use it as a kill confirm at a higher percentage you have your opponent stunned, so its legacy as a taunt kill can live on here in Smash. Finally, taunt number 3 is a unique taunt that is rarely seen in TF2 thanks to it being a rare occurrence, with Spy taking a crab-like stance as he raises his arms above his head, clasping his hands together like crab claws before returning to his idle stance. This is the secret taunt that Spy can perform with his disguise kit, which fans have fittingly dubbed the Spy Crab. While this was originally just a fan description, both for just a silly taunt and the way that Spy walked when he had his disguise kit out and looked straight up, this would come back through both cosmetics and official taunts like Manrobics, and in turn, become one of the most iconic aspects of Spy's character amongst fans of TF2. Much like the TF2 characters that came before him, Spy will make use of a blend of iconic cosmetics throughout TF2's history, all while changing his team color with each color option, with all odd colors being red and all even colors being blue. Whether or not you want to keep things default or want to show off your style, there's something here for everyone. Color number 1 is Spy's default appearance on the red team, featuring his iconic pinstripe suit and pants, red tie, black leather gloves, and his maroon balaclava that conceals his face. Color number 2 is Spy's default appearance on the blue team, featuring the same appearance as color number 1, save for everything red now being blue. While the red Spy tends to get more publicity, I personally feel that Spy's blue colors fit the design far better, all while mixing in much better with his cold personality and abrasive playstyle. Color number 3 will have Red Spy don the fancy fedora, the very first cosmetic item that Spy ever received and a classic that many Spy players both love and use to this day. Color number 4 will have the blue Spy don both the backfire's billycock and the camera beard, with these pair of items being given to the Spy during the classless update. While the billycock is mostly forgotten, many fans of Spy both love and actively use the camera beard to this day, and is a great way of adding a bit of humor to what is a generally dark character. Color number 5 will have the red Spy don both the Detective War hat and the Party Phantom mask, with this pair of items being given to Spy during the Australian Christmas update. This striking pair of cosmetics goes perfectly with Spy's design, and is definitely going to stand out even amongst other Spy players. Color number 6 will have the blue Spy don the Charmer's Chapeau, an item given to Spy in the 3rd community update for TF2. This is one of Spy's most iconic hats, with many Spy mains having made this their main hat, myself included. As a result, it's only fitting that this appeared here in Smash as well. Color number 7 will have the red Spy don the Magistrate's Mullet, an item given to Spy during the very first community update and a classic item loved by Spy players everywhere. While rather silly for some, it's one that many love to use. Just don't give high fives to a guy who's wearing one with an unusual electric effect, for you might just end up getting shocked. Finally, column number 8 will have the blue Spy forgo all cosmetics and instead be turned to the robot Spy from Man vs. Machine, granting the player both a unique idle animation and voice clips to go along with Spy's robotic appearance. Team Fortress 2 is a game that I don't think needs any introduction. A legendary first-person shooter that, just when people think it has reached its lowest point, would go on to reach new heights more than 15 years after its launch. For those who don't know, Team Fortress 2 has hit an all-new player high thanks to the summer update that launched earlier last month. And through it, we've not only gotten to see a game come back from its darkest timeline, but it brought back former content creators like Germa and Star, who haven't played in nearly a decade. I owe a ton to both of them, as their content was one of the biggest reasons for getting into and spending over 2,000 hours in TF2. And since it's free, I can't recommend it enough for those looking to enjoy a fun game. But as much as I want to sell TF2's praises right now, we're not talking about Spee in TF2, we're talking about Spee in Smash. And I think it'd be amazing if it ever happened. I fully believe that Valve is absolutely a company that will have a character in Smash at some point in the future. And while there are a bunch of characters that could work as playable fighters, most people feel that Team Fortress 2 would be the first series to get in should it ever happen. While I personally feel that Gordon Freeman has a better chance thanks simply to his legacy and how important his games are for video game history as a whole, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to see one of TF2's mercenaries make it onto the Smash roster at some point. However, as fun as Spy could be, I do think they'd go with Heavy first, if simply because of the fact that he's the most iconic member of the TF2 cast. While I agree that characters like Soldier, Spy, or Scout would offer more fun playstyles, Heavy definitely has a leg up on all of them. And since that's the case, it's hard to genuinely ask for a character like Spy to not only be the first TF2 character in Smash, but the first Valve character as a whole. Regardless, the TF2 cast is so iconic and fun to work with that I don't feel any sort of regret in designing this moveset for Spy, and I can definitely tell you that he will not be the last mercenary I cover on this channel. While you won't see the next mercenary for a long time, I can only hope that I emulate said merc's design in Smash as well as I did with Spy when the time comes. Until then, I'll keep hoping for anything from Valve at all. And for those of you in the same boat, all I can say is don't lose hope. You never know what might be waiting to catch you when you least expect it. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and comment. It not only helps out with the algorithm, but also gives me a much needed boost in morale. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to jump right into other movesets that I've made, follow the link in the description to go to my Challenger Concept playlist. Just be sure you press that little bell icon, as doing so will leave you assured that you'll never miss a future upload. For now, I've been Felicia Fan, and I hope that you have a good one.